Recently, I made a new goal, and that goal is I want to waste more time. And that may not be the opening line you expected in the video you clicked on, but if you stick with me through to the end of the video, you will understand how this is a solution to a problem that is created for us conscious content creators who actually want to make content that's redemptive and makes a difference in people's lives and actually makes their lives better. Those of us who want to make our content count. And while this is a topic that I actually wanted to talk about for quite a while now, there was a comment left on one of my videos a little while back by a longtime subscriber named Chris. Chris is one of the first 100 subscribers to this channel, and I really appreciate his thoughts when he makes a comment on a video. Now, this was a big comment. Chris covered a lot of ground, and so I'm just going to read a section that pertains to this particular video. Chris says, "As I get older and become more and more aware of how limited our time on this earth may be, I have been feeling a much stronger need to make things that bring value to people's lives and don't just entertain them and waste their time. Like, if someone is going to dedicate a portion of their short life to something that I made, I really better make sure that that thing is worth their time. And the best way I can see doing that is to make things that bring people closer to God, or at least closer to his principles for living." And that really resonated with me because I want the content, the things that I make, the things that I invest my time in to matter, to count. I want to improve people's lives. I want to change lives. I want to point them towards good things and towards the truth. I've been finding, at least in my life, that one of the dangers of this way of thinking, which is, I think, overall good, this is something that we should all be striving for, is that we conflate the opposite of urgency with laziness. We think that urgency creates or even requires action, when in reality, often, at least for many people, the pressure created by urgency, instead of creating action, creates overwhelm, which leads to inaction, to freezing up. And urgency can actually end up requiring perfection without the time to develop it, and actually kills long-term thinking. And then you end up putting all your eggs in one basket, and that almost never ends well, if it even starts. And we all know that we don't get better if we don't practice. But the problem with practice is that it feels like a waste of time. It feels like it doesn't count. It's not important enough. It doesn't have the impact that we want. It's not perfect enough. Just the other day, I was hearing a statistic about Picasso. Now, Picasso is not my favorite artist, but we know Picasso for less than 100 paintings, maybe as few as 12 paintings. I probably couldn't identify more than 6 of Picasso's paintings. But Picasso didn't just wake up one morning and paint 12 famous paintings. In his lifetime, Picasso made over 150,000 pieces of art, of which he is well known for 10. 12, maybe 100 in some circles. And an example from the filmmaking world is somebody like Spielberg, who is famous for about 10 movies. Now, how many movies have you never seen, have I never heard of before Spielberg made that first of those 10 movies? Most famous filmmakers like Spielberg have made hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of films in their lifetime before anybody ever hears of them. Films that will never be seen by wide audiences. And the truth is, a lot of those films probably weren't very good. But if he had tried to shortcut that process because he only wanted to make movies that mattered, he only had so much time in his life. You can only make so many movies in your lifetime. Gone straight to a Hollywood studio and they had somehow let him start making films, I think we all know that we would have never heard of Spielberg. It wouldn't have worked out. It would have been over before it started. And so we need to be careful and really honest with ourselves in making sure that this really good desire to make art that matters and make the most of the time that God's given us doesn't become an excuse for inaction or defending our own pride. The other day, Jill and I were watching a YouTube video, and we were really convicted because this YouTube creator rolled up his sleeve and showed us a tattoo on his arm, and that tattoo said, "My cup overflows." And if you're familiar with the Bible at all, you will recognize that as a verse from one of the most famous Psalms in the Bible. Now, this creator isn't religious in the Christian sense at all, I'm very confident, and yet he had seen something in that passage that somehow my whole life growing up in the church I had not seen. And to put me to shame, he had made it his life verse. And he went on in that video to talk about how it had transformed his life. And I had to actually stop and ask myself, do I believe that's true? Does my cup actually overflow? You may only live once, but has God given you enough? Not only enough, but abundantly more than you need, because that's the character of God. He's very generous. Has he given you enough time to do what he's called you, what he's created you to do? And that is a profoundly convicting question for me, because have I been living that way? If God has given me enough time, and not only enough time, my cup overflows, have I been living as if he hasn't given me enough time? And arranging the priorities of my life as if my time is too short. And if my cup overflows, my cup of energy, my cup of time, God's given me more than enough to accomplish what he wants me to accomplish, there's no rush. What if we've all been living in this hustle and the whole time there's been no rush? How would you live your life differently if that was true? And for me, in this last year, I made a goal. And that goal was to waste more time. And for me, that means things that I felt like were luxuries, things I had to hold off until I'd made it. Because it just never felt like there was time in the day for those things. There was so many other things that were more important to do. Things that really should be basic to everyday life. I was putting them off into the future. I was avoiding them because somehow they were getting in the way of the content that mattered. I'm making time to read books, to exercise, playing with the kids, investing in friends and family, and being okay with making videos, making content that isn't perfect, that doesn't have a profound point every single time, even though I love to do that. That's my favorite kind of content to make. Some days it's just not going to happen, and that's okay. I'm trying to be okay with less polish so that I can practice other things like efficiency of my production pipeline, or getting better at hooks, or saying no to the perfectionism that for me comes up when I focus too hard on making every moment count. Now, before you go, Jill also has a really good story and thought that I want you guys to hear about this, so let me just go get her.
As a teenage girl, I came across this verse in Proverbs 30, which says, "Give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, 'Who is the Lord?' And if I am poor, I may steal and thus insult your holy name." And that verse just always really struck me. It always stood out to me. But it became more real when Dallas and I were first married. And I was just thinking about this verse of just, give me just enough to satisfy my needs. And the idea came is to my mind is just going, what if God has already given me everything I need? And I just lack the ability to steward it well. What if I don't have the wisdom on how to steward what he's already given? And even just in the Lord's Prayer where it says, "Give us today our daily bread." And I realized that I already had way more than my daily bread. So this really changed how I prayed about it. Instead of feeling like God hadn't given enough, I need more, but show me how to steward what you've already given me. This was really mentally shifting in terms of how I thought about things. And I feel like it really, really changed, because the thing is about when you're in a lack mindset, you're trying to hold on to everything. You're worried about when you're going to have more money to buy things. And so you can't get rid of it, because what if you can't afford to buy it back? And when that starts to change, when you feel like God's already given you enough, once you learn to let go, I start to feel like we had more. And I start to define what you need, what you don't need. And it really starts to give you clarity in terms of the tools that are actually valuable for what you're doing and your family. And then also just be able to become more generous, because you're not feeling like things are so tight. And I was just amazed how much just that, without changing income level, how much that really started to change my mindset.
Thanks, Chris, for posting the comment that prompted this video. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody else for hanging out with us today. If you want to keep hanging out, you can watch this video right here.